to break news for the public. And, Mike Florio, he'll probably explain this better than I can in terms of the journalism ethics of it. And I'm very curious to hear what he has to say on
Absolutely. And he's joining us now on the River Islands guest line, Pro Football Talk. He has written many books, Father of Mine, Son of Mine, On Our Way Home, and Big Shield as well. Mike, good morning. Joe Spadoni alongside Sam Lubman. And we're just talking about, the Kyle Shanahan car accident and the fact that it took 11 days for it to be reported. Just your overall thoughts on that in general from your journalistic background. In today's day and age, having something under wraps for 11 days of this significance is almost unheard of.
When I saw the announcement on Saturday morning, I thought, well, this must have just happened, or it happened last night. And then I saw July 14, and I had this glitch in my brain, like, what is today? Is it the 15th? And then I did the math. How in the world does something like that stay under wraps for 11 days? Because these things become a matter of public record. To the extent that we have newspapers anymore, a lot of us, even if we're not public figures, we don't like flipping through and seeing the marriage listings, the divorce listings, the property transfers. Most small-town newspapers have that. Everything's public. There are public records that are available to the media, and most media operations will have someone who monitors actively these various avenues to see if someone pops up who is a public figure, whose involvement in a situation, whether it's a car accident, an arrest, whatever it may be, that is inherently public information. And if you're a public figure, there's even less of an expectation that it's going to be a secret. So in this case, either the people who monitor this information were asleep at the switch, or a deliberate decision was made, possibly in consultation with the 49ers, to hold the information until the 49ers were ready to disclose it on the same day they reported for training camp, or there was an effort by the public authorities to slow play it, to conceal it, to downplay it, and make it not noticeable and not known. But either way, 11 days, that is surprising. And then the way that it came out, at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, the 49ers announced it. 1 minute later, Shefty tweets it with details about the injuries that weren't in the announcement. 1 minute later, a lengthy article from ESPN that was surely not written in 2 minutes is published with the details about the injuries, details about the accident, quotes from the police lieutenant. So they knew about the mere fact of the accident before they reported it. And there are many things in this day and age that get reported without 100% of the details. The fact that Kyle Shanahan was in a car accident in and of itself is reportable. And then you can follow with all the details. So the whole thing from the get-go was odd, and it felt like there was, at a minimum, coordination with ESPN, and maybe beyond that, conscious and deliberate looking the other way and waiting for the 49ers to announce on their own terms by some of the people who cover the team on a regular basis.
Well, and to that end, like, did they think that this was going to be like, they wanted to keep it under wraps and it would be like a nothing burger when it did come out? Like, why do that in general if all the, reports have come out now, and Grant Cohn of Sports Illustrated, he kind of threw out the link of the accident itself. There was no like foul play according to the, all the documentation, all of it. There was no substances. They tested for everything. I guess Kyle Shanahan was on his cell phone, but like, it didn't sound like there was any thing like nefarious going on. So why keep it under wraps for this long, I guess, is the ultimate question.
Well, and the problem is when you don't have transparency, it makes people wonder, is there something that someone's trying to hide? Because why wouldn't this be out there? And it may be as simple as they were just trying to figure out what the hell they were going to do. Chris Sims said yesterday on PFT Live that 6 or 7 days after the accident, Kyle was still foggy and not recovering. And you think about this, you've got training camp coming 1 hour at a time, closer and closer. What are we going to do? How are we going to proceed? It may have just been a clumsy, clunky, knee-jerk reaction. Let's just keep this quiet until we have a plan. Let's come up with our plan, and let's take as much time as we can to come up with a plan before training camp opens. Let's monitor Kyle. Maybe he'll be fine by then. Maybe he'll be fine. Maybe we'll be able to announce this and say he's fine, he's recovered, and nothing to see here. But it just creates a situation. Anytime you try to keep something under wraps and succeed, when it comes to light, and it always does, people are going to say, well, why did they do that?
Mike, again, I'm reading your story that you wrote about this yesterday, and I think you do a good job breaking it down here, but there's a part of it that I really want to ask you about. And that in terms of, I feel like part of it is like it's balancing the relationships as a reporter with a team. And you kind of talk about, brokering a deal with the team isn't uncommon, but is also the antithesis of journalism here. When you're a reporter, you're trying to have a good relationship with a team, you might be more willing to hold a story for a small amount of time to help foster that relationship and get, maybe a scoop later on down the line. But where do you draw the line in terms of, wanting to preserve that relationship and hold a story versus, you kind of talk about later in the story that part of being a journalist, your job is to break news when you get it. So when it comes to just that relationship aspect of it, how do you kind of view that balance there and where that line is at?
Well, and look, guys, I had zero journalism training, and many would say, and it shows every day, but I've learned through 25 years, through trial and error, more error than trial, how to do this the right way. And you have to have a stubborn willingness to say to someone who may not like what you have reported or what you're going to report or what you're going to opine, if that's part of the job. And it all gets blurred into all sorts of things nowadays. I have a job to do. You have a job to do. I have a job to do. Sometimes those things overlap. Sometimes they are at odds. But I have a job to do. I respect your job. I hope you respect my job. The concern is that the people who will stubbornly say, I have a job to do, there's a lot of discretion when it comes to the dissemination of information. And I think one of the core problems here, and this goes back 20 plus years, the moment NFL Network decided they were going to have their own in-house stable of reporters who cover the NFL and are paid by the NFL to cover the NFL, they start to kind of like this idea. We've got people who are naturally going to exercise discretion, and they're the ones who get the discretionary information. They're the ones who get treated better. They're the ones who get better access. There's so much that a team can do when it comes to cooperating with reporters. And if everyone else is going along and you're the one who isn't, good luck doing your job. And I think that's at the core of this. That's the challenge. And I know for me personally, and I'll give you an example of something that happened a few years ago, there was something that I was repeating, some pot I was stirring about a player in a team and a possible trade. And the GM of the team reached out to me and said, can you please stop? Can you just please stop? And if you do it, I'll give you our next big scoop. And I said, time out here, Bucky. I thank you for confirming my suspicions about how my competitors do their business, but no, I'm not playing that game. And you got to be willing to do it. And the problem is it's so competitive now. There's so many people who are vying for that text message 5 minutes before the announcement goes out that it's very easy. It's very easy. You don't, as I say all the time, you don't sell your soul in bulk. You sell it one sliver at a time. And I think that just kind of happens. And it's an accumulation of subtle, small, nuanced decisions that are made over a period of time. And before you know it, you're compromised. And you can't do your job the way the job needs to be done, because if you do, you're gonna piss off the people that you're counting on to help you do your job.
Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio joining us here on the Morning Roast, courtesy of the River Islands guest line. Big story out of Tampa yesterday, Mike. Vita Vea asking to get traded. Obviously, contract talks have stalled there. They seem to be prioritizing Baker Mayfield, the quarterback, and getting a deal done there. What are you hearing on Vita Vea? Obviously, I saw Ted Wynn's tweet via The Athletic. Source told him that he's looking to maybe go play in California or with the Raiders potentially. What are you hearing on Vita Vea?
Well, before he goes to California, you better do some research on state income tax there versus Florida.
Correct.
Sorry to anyone who's living in California and dealing with it, especially at the highest possible bracket, but that's a reality. Look, this is the fundamental problem with NFL contracts. They are not two-way documents. They are one-way arrangements. The team can tear it up anytime they want, and anytime they think it's a bad deal for them, what do? They tear it up. Sometimes after they go to the player and say, hey, you better take less and make this a good deal for us, or we are going to tear it up. If it's a good deal for the team and a bad deal for the player's stuck. The player's stuck. Vita Vea can't say, given the market, given the salary cap, given the trend, $17 million is really not enough for me this year. I'm tearing it up and making myself a free agent. Team can do it at any time. Player can't. And that's at the core of this. So when you get a guy who's 31 and you're talking about a position where on every snap there's wear and tear put on the body, how much longer is he going to play at a high level? And we've heard the cliche for years that the NFL has become a what have you done for me lately league. That's not true. It's what are you doing for me right now? And what do I think you're going to do for me tomorrow? That's how guys get valued, and that's how they get paid. And I think that's the core of this. The Buccaneers are valuing him now and moving forward. Ignore everything he's ever done. Now and moving forward, they've got a number. Now and moving forward, he's got a number. And they can't reach a deal. And so what levers do you have? One lever is demand a trade. Because you know what will happen? Teams are going to start calling the Buccaneers. And if they can make the Buccaneers happy with the offer, and if they can make Vita Vea happy with the offer he gets traded. Remember when Dexter Lawrence started doing that? We thought, oh, they're never going to trade him. They're never going to trade him. But from the team's perspective, hey, I got a guy who's not happy. And I don't want a guy here who's not going to be happy in the last year of his contract. If I can get something of value in exchange, maybe I'll do it. So it's just a natural progression when there's an impasse over what the guy is worth today and what they expect him to be worth moving forward.
All right, Mike, let's talk about this 49ers team overall. And this could be a bit of a broad question, but I'll leave it open to give a broad answer here. But just when you look at this 49ers team as is here, going into the start of training camp, where do you right now just see them overall in the NFC hierarchy?
I think they're one of the Super Bowl contenders, and that is a narrow category, but it's a broad description. But I think if you got 3 Super Bowl contenders in the NFC West, and with all of this Seahawks-Rams focus, hey, it's an opportunity for the 49ers to kind of quietly go about their business and maybe pull an inside straight. And the next thing you know, they're the team that emerges from the NFC West. But there's so many factors that go into it. We spend the whole offseason talking about changes that teams have made and where they're going to get better, where they're going to get worse. And then reality sets in, and it begins for the 49ers with the most important person in the organization not available to fully participate in the preparations for the season. So that's just one example of how the unpredictable things are going to happen. And the true test of whether or not an organization is in the right position to thrive under all circumstances is how they deal with that adversity. But because of Kyle Shanahan, I'm a firm believer in the 49ers. If they stay healthy, we look at what they do the years that the injury bug doesn't happen. Last year, the injury bug did happen, and they still had a very good season. But the Shanahan situation, and maybe they just freaked out, because I think that it's not a stretch to say he is the straw that stirs that drink. He is the guy that makes that team go. And he is going to get the most out of whatever talent they have. And he's going to will a team. He's going to game plan a team. He's going to scheme a team into being a competitor. And now he's not there. And at least he's not there in full. And they don't know when that's going to happen. But he gets back quickly. 49ers keep the team relatively healthy. They're in a position to kind of go about their business without a lot of attention, without a lot of expectations. Team number 3 in the NFC West, but they're in a position to have a good year. And, you know, doesn't it seem to be that they tend to have their best years when it's not expected?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot, especially towards the end of the year. You saw a lot was not expected of them, and I think you could make that same case this year, especially with how good the Seahawks and Rams are. But then on that note, Mike, and maybe you kind of hinted at this in your last answer, but if the 49ers were to win the NFC West, or 49ers, obviously, they have potential to win the NFC West, what is more likely to prevent them from winning the NFC West? Just it's a redux of last year where there's just too many injuries for them to overcome? Or is it a situation where maybe they do stay healthy this year, but the Rams and Seahawks are just a better team than they have?
I think that's the concern, that the Seahawks are going to remain exactly where they were last year and maybe even get better in year 3 of Mike McDonald, year 2 of Sam Darnold. Now they are breaking in a new offensive coordinator, which could change things. And Kenneth Walker III, the Super Bowl MVP, who really wasn't the go-to workhorse guy until Zach Charbonnet's injury forced him into that role. They don't have him. But schedule this year, all the AFC West teams, all the NFC East teams. Now, it helps that the 49ers finished in 3rd place in the division. That's beneficial because there's 3 games that hinge on where you finished in the division. And in a league with margins that can be very, very tight, those 3 games can make all the difference. But, yeah, I think it just comes down to how they hold their own against the Seahawks and the Rams and just, you know, hope to stay as healthy as possible. And just one week after another, you get 10 weeks into the season and you're like, hey, we're in a position where we can maybe make a run here.
Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio joining us here on the Morning Roast, courtesy of the River Islands guest line. Mike, I'm just going to ask you a straight up question. All things being equal, you have Team X right here that needs a quarterback. Would you rather that team have Sam Darnold as the starter or Brock Purdy?
Probably Brock Purdy, because I think he's been more sustained. It's been more productive. And, you know, you flip the two. Last year, did the Seahawks win the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy? Probably, especially the game itself. It's not like Sam Darnold came out and threw for 389 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Patriots. The team was good enough to overcome a bad Sam Darnold performance. Remember that game against the Rams? They had 4 interceptions from Darnold, and they still almost won the game. And they didn't lose another one after that. It came down to a field goal. And they could have won that game even with 4 Sam Darnold interceptions. That was the problem the year before in Minnesota. The Vikings weren't good enough to overcome a bad Sam Darnold game. The Seahawks are. So I think last year and through his career, Purdy has done more to help the 49ers win than Darnold has done. I'm not saying that makes Darnold bad. This isn't a yes-no. They both can be perfectly acceptable. But if we're going to draw a line between the two, I'd probably go with Purdy.
Mike, Brandon Aiyuk has been a big topic of conversation all summer here with what he's been doing on Instagram. The Niners are pretty steadfast. They're kind of keeping him on the unactive list here. Just your thoughts on how this whole saga with Aiyuk has played out this summer. And I don't want to pigeonhole you into making a prediction, but do you hear any sort of chatter in terms about whether or not other teams, whether it's the Commanders or otherwise, even have any sort of interest in Aiyuk right now?
Mike, did he actually buy a $10 million house in Virginia? Is that real?
I didn't even bother to explore that one, because none of this matters until he files a petition for reinstatement with the league. The 49ers put him on the reserve left squad list last year because he left the squad, and there's a whole procedure. Guy walks out the door, you send him a letter that says if you don't come back within 5 days, we're going to put you on the reserve left squad list. It shuts you down for the rest of the season. You can't play for anyone, and it keeps you off the 90-man roster the next year until you file a petition for reinstatement. And he refuses to do that. It's very simple. There's a very simple A leads to B leads to C here to get Brandon Aiyuk the freedom he wants. 1, file a petition with the league office for reinstatement. 2, show up at training camp and say, I'm ready to go. And 3, given that the 49ers would be foolish to let him walk into the weight room or onto the practice field, a season-ending injury would cause them to owe him more than $26 million this year. They'll cut him. That's all he has to do. But he refuses to do it. So he doesn't count toward the salary cap. They don't have to pay him a penny. He's in this separate category where he's just in limbo, and they're not going to cut him from the reserve left squad list. There's no reason for them to do it. Why would they do it? And then he goes to Washington, has 1,500 yards this year, and they look like idiots for letting him walk out the door for no compensation. This is the best scenario for them, for him to just stay where he is and do nothing. Because if he would show up as part of the roster and say, I want to go to work, that's the day he gets cut. And the fact that we've never seen a clear, unequivocal report from the Commanders that they don't want him, because it would be so easy for Adam Peters to pick up the phone and call one of the insiders and say, hey, you know, per sources, we don't want this guy. They haven't done that. They haven't done that because I think they know they could get him on the cheap, and their quarterbacks, despite the ugliness that happened on social media between Jaden Daniels and Brandon Aiyuk during the summer, they go back to 2019 when they played together at Arizona State. Jaden Daniels doesn't have a lot of weapons other than Terry McLaurin. He's in an important year for his career, 3rd year of his rookie contract. He can set himself up for a major extension. If he wants him, they'll sign him. And they don't have to make that decision until Brandon Aiyuk makes the decision to file the petition with the league office for reinstatement. So that's kind of where it is. And you know what's going to happen? He's just going to do – I mean, I predict he's going to do nothing. And I predict that the season's going to begin, and like it does every year, when the season starts, the guys who aren't playing are forgotten, and the train keeps rolling.
There you go. Mike, one more here for you, by the way. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, joining us here on the River Islands Guest Line. Check out his books on the Amazon bookstore, Father of Mine, Son of Mine, On Our Way Home, and Big Shield. Mike, earlier on the show, Spino and I, we played a little bit of a game. Basically, we picked one player on the 49ers this year. If you could just turn injuries off for them all year long, the one guy on the 49ers you can just make immune from injuries all year long, who would it be? My partner here picked Dre Greenlaw. I picked Christian McCaffrey. If we were to bring you in on this, just one guy on the 49ers who you could just make immune from injuries all year long, who would you pick for the Niners?
I mean, since McCaffrey's already taken, I would say Nick Bosa. There's already been some comments about how good he looks, and we've seen him have a couple of ACL tears in his career. But and that's what makes what they did last year so impressive, and it may be one of the reasons Robert Saleh is now the head coach of the Titans. The way the defense responded once Bosa was gone was very impressive, I think. But I mean, if you could give McCaffrey like video game unlimited health, then that's the guy, because just give him the ball on every play, either hand it to him or throw it to him. If you don't have to worry about the guy getting injured, give him 40 touches a game and just go. And we've seen that he's the guy that makes that offense go. And it's funny that that's happening in a Kyle Shanahan offense, because his dad was really the dean of the interchangeable running backs approach. And look at what a workhorse has done and what a difference McCaffrey has made for the 49ers.